This is Emma Dark, Director of Season 8 and Salient -10, and you're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neil, and I'm joined by M.W. Daniels, writer and director of House of Lexi. It's very cool to have you here.
Hi, Neil. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it,
Yeah. So, give everyone an idea of what House of Lexi is about.
I suppose I can't say too much because it's a short film.
Right.
I don't want to spoil it for people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about a girl called Lexi, and she loses her sister at birth. Her sister's died at birth, and she's kind of got this attachment to her, and she wants to see what she's like now, like kind of growing up with her, because she's not there. So she imagines her there with her, but it's not all kind of love, the imagination plays tricks, and obviously things start to turn on her. And also her mother supposedly died in a car crash, but I say supposedly, it's kind of all hearsay in the film. The mother in the film is kind of a really open-ended thing that I've left open in the film. But the sister's definitely dead, so she's seeing her dead sister, and she lives in this house, so she, the house is hers. It's got a kind of feeling about it, and that's why it's called House of Lexi, because it's kind of a lonely story about one person,
Mm-hmm. So, where did you find the house that you film it in?
A friend of mine said we could film there, and I gave her a part in the film. She's never acted before, but she was amazing. It was really, really good. And yeah, we filmed there. We filmed there on a Saturday, and then we filmed in a place called Whitstable, which Peter Cushing, you'd be familiar with, famous old horror actor, used to live, and he actually died. He finished his days there, Peter Cushing. So it's quite famous for him being there. So we filmed on the seafront, and we filmed with some drone photography up above. So we wanted to get the beach, the kind of, the mass of the sea kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and get them, Helen and Emma, by the sea, so you could get that real good feeling. So, and it worked really well, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was good filming that.
Yeah. It's interesting that in modern times you can use a drone affordably to get like overhead shots, because that wouldn't be something, someone without like a huge budget would have been able to do not that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, having something like that is amazing, because it wasn't that expensive. It was kind of really decent price as well. And the guy himself, a guy called David Gilbert from Sky Motion Imagery, he was amazing, really enthusiastic, really professional as well. So he was operating it with the controls, and then Nikolai, the director of photography I work with, Nikolai Kornum, he was operating obviously how the screen, the images are and stuff like that, and it worked brilliantly. So, but I mean, it's always obviously working with drone. There could be problems with obviously seagulls, or if it starts to rain, or there's too many people around. So we was all aware of that, but on the day it worked out. It worked out really good, which was amazing,
Mm-hmm. So where did the idea for the short come from?
Well, I've been doing films for about 7 years, and only over the last year they've turned from crime and extreme horror into psychological drama and psychological horror. So they're all kind of linked in a way. A lot of the films, they deal with imaginary friends, they deal with kind of depression, deal with anxiety, deal with paranoia, deal with hallucinations, deal with like kind of hauntings, and stuff like that, hauntings in the mind and things like that, So House of Lexi kind of come out of that. I kind of wanted to write something that was quite close to home, and I was born in 1970, and my sister died in 1965. And for me, I never met her, obviously, I was born 5 years later. Mm-hmm. So for me, that inspired me to write a story about someone wanting to see someone there grow up, So it was kind of quite a true, half of it is a true sort of story, yeah, from my own life. And the other half, obviously, I worked up a character and worked up this kind of thing in the film. So it's quite personal, I suppose. It's a personal film.
Have your parents seen your movies, or?
My dad, yeah, my dad's seen the films. He really likes them. I think my mum, if they're too kind of bloody or violent, some of the films, but she likes the films that are psychological dramas. The films I've been doing lately, because obviously there's none of that in them, and it's completely different. But yeah, my dad's a big supporter of the films, and so is my brother and sister-in-law and friends and stuff like that. So it's really good. It's nice to see what they think of it as well. What the kind of work that I put into it. It's and they're all big film fans, and I grew up watching films, and they got me into kind of horror films and stuff like that in the 70s, especially my brother. So it's good to have their kind of approval, I suppose.
Yeah, and since the story itself, like it comes from a personal place for you and for them if they know the backstory. Do you think this one will be, different for them to watch?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell them originally that was the sort of case, but I think they kind of realised that was the kind of thing, seeing someone growing up that's not there. So it was kind of putting two and two together, and it was easy to work out, really, especially, I think, speaking to my dad about it. So yeah, I mean, it's good to write those kind of stories. I kind of didn't want to write stuff that was, the kind of fetishy kind of violence and the crime stuff that I started off with. I wanted to write stuff that affects me and stuff that's kind of quite real, stuff that worries me about life, and the stuff that I've been through, stuff that's part of my life, So I thought it's a really good thing to write them stories, and the stories come out kind of more original that way as well when you look at them. And I like doing that kind of stuff, it's more grand as well when I'm composing music for the films. It makes it more powerful for me, writing music for the films now, where in the past I kind of didn't really bother writing music for my films, we just put sound effects in and stuff like that. But now I can play piano and get singers in and synthesizers and put percussion on, and so it's become this whole kind of world now, you see.
Yeah. When you're writing what you're going to make, or when you're directing it, do you think of the music? So when at times they compose, you kind of already have the idea in your mind?
Yeah, when I first write the scripts, I'm always playing music, sort of to inspire sometimes a script, like different bands or classical music or soundtrack music, and I always write the music before we actually film. I never score the music because I kind of want room to maneuver. And when I give Nikolai the music, he might use, track 10 on scene 2, not track 10 on scene 10, you see? And normally he'll send me it and say, I've got a suggestion. And it's always great. It always works. So we like that room to maneuver. And I always like bringing the script into the studio, looking at the script, then writing the music and doing it there. I'll do some stuff at home and then go into the recording studio and put the whole thing down. But it's good to have that sort of spontaneity, because you can sort of experiment that way, and accidents will happen in the studio that normally work. They'll normally actually accentuate the soundtrack other than make it sound awful,
Now, who is Nikolai, by the way?
Nikolai Kornum is a Danish fashion photographer and filmmaker, and I met him for a mutual friend called Katarina Samuelis, and I met him through her, and he did an album cover for me. He just took the picture. Katarina animated the album cover, a band called Melrose Avenue that I was doing with a friend called Jason, and then I wanted to work with somebody. I was working with somebody doing films, but it was analog, so I wanted to work with someone who was doing digital and sort of up-to-date films, And Nikolai does that, and she said, speak to Nikolai, so I spoke to him, we went for a meeting, and that was it. Yeah, it was 5 years ago, and we've been doing films for around 4 years now, so, and it's brilliant. He's amazing to work with. He's a great people person, and he's a genius, really, yeah. He's excellent. Once he sends me the edit, it always looks just fabulous, it looks amazing.
Yeah. So Emma Dark is in this, and I know her from movies she's made herself. So how did you get to know Emma, and how did she become the lead of the movie in the short?
I did some acting in a short sort of music video last year, and I met Emma on that. And I kept in correspondence with her, and then said, I've got this film, do you want the lead part? And she read the script and she really liked it. So, and that was it. It was great. And working with her was amazing. She's brilliant. She's such a lovely person. Brilliant film knowledge, amazing knowledge of film. And she's great. She's so good on set. She's excellent. Yeah, I couldn't recommend her enough, really. And we're going to work together again soon, hopefully. But so I just had her in mind. I just thought she would work really well for the part, and she did. She really is really, really good in the part of Lexi. She works so well, So it was a privilege. Yeah, brilliant to work with her. Amazing.
Yeah, I got to meet her last year when I was in London for the first time for Fright Fest, and she's very cool. And I've had her on the show since.
She's great. Yeah, she does so much stuff. Acting and photography, filmmaking. Does her own films, does everything. So she does that kind of thing. Like I do. I don't obviously make. I kind of do everything, but actually use the camera, which I can't use the camera. But she does all this other stuff. So she's very good. We were talking about doing a music video for a track I'm going to write at one point. So yeah, she just pushes on and she just keeps promoting herself, keeps going, which I think is admirable, because I do the same. And she gave me a lot of great advice. One of the best bits of advice Emma Dark's given me is never hide. Always be there, putting your product out. Never kind of back off and I don't know for 4 or 5 months and disappear. Like if you've got something. Just kind of go for it, and keep it going. So it's the only way you're going to get it out to people.
That's interesting to talk about because I think some people don't really talk about that. It is, self-promotion. Even doing the show, obviously, you have to get it out there for people to hear it. And I think sometimes people feel like, I don't want to push something too much because I might, people get tired of it or whatever. But at the same time, if you don't, it's not going to get out there.
Yeah, I think she's exactly the same mind as me. If you make the art or what your art and what you do and you're proud of it, you should just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and go for it, because you love it that much. So she's totally right, in doing that. If I've got something and I kind of just sat around and just sent it to a couple of sites, it's kind of a waste of my money and time really and effort. So you put all this effort into this thing. And the idea is just to really just go for it. Yeah, why not? The more places that get it and give it coverage, then obviously the better.
So when you say you want to work together again, would it be the same way, like her as an actor, you as writing director, or doesn't it really matter? You just want to do something together?
Yeah, I'd love to play a lead role again. That'd be great. In another film, yeah, I'd like to write something else for her, definitely. I mean, I've got a film in August coming up, and I've got a film in November, and I've got a film in February. So after that, then I'll be working on something to work with her, hopefully. So, but I've got 3 more films before then, and obviously House of Lexi to promote for a long time. So it takes a long time to, for festivals and to get films out there. Could be a year, could be a couple of years. Just keeping hammering the film and just going for it, really. That's the only way to do it.
So that being said, what are the plans for House of Lexi? You want to get it into festivals, I assume?
Yeah, I've sent it to a few festivals already, submitted it to a few festivals. The film I did last year called Being Without got to the Gold Movie Awards. It got to the final of the Gold Movie Awards, which was in January. So we went, me and Nikolai and Kesa Martin, who's in that film, we went to like a ceremony, like a gala, which was quite surreal but really nice. So it's strange. And 8 months before, I was sitting in my room like writing a script, and 8 months later, kind of you're there in this place. It's really weird, but so I suppose House of Lexi even more so, because there's a lot more places to send it, especially with horror. With psychological drama, maybe it's slightly more limited, but with horror, you can there's so many outlets, for horror. It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. What is it about horror that interested you?
I've always been into horror. My brother got me into horror in the 1970s and got into Universal kind of horror, the monsters kind of thing, and especially The Invisible Man and Creature from the Black Lagoon were the two films for me, which growing up, they were the films, And obviously into the 80s, like Day of the Dead and Reanimator, Hellraiser, Near Dark, and The Fly, especially Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis. The Fly sort of just blew my head off, that was the film, because it was like a doomed love story, stroke horror film, stroke kind of almost gore film, but it had that doomed love story, which I'm kind of playing on now in a lot of my films. So it's, amazing soundtrack, Howard Shore. It was brilliant. And Alien, obviously, in 1979. Those sort of films. And The Elephant Man, but I don't consider, obviously it's not a horror film, but still it's an inspirational film for me, and it's still David Lynch's best film, I'd say, next to Eraserhead. But the horror thing in the 80s, was a big thing for me as well, not just the 1970s. The 80s everything was there in the 80s. I'm really disappointed by horror now because I just haven't seen anything that I really like. That's just probably the way I am, I'm probably too picky about things, but I think Hereditary I didn't like, Mandy I didn't like, which is awful. I just couldn't stand those films. It just bored me. But there's a film called Possum that's really good. Like
that was good.
Films. There's a few films around that have got something for me,
I really did like Mandy, I have to admit, but Hereditary I was not a fan of either. And I know not everyone, but a lot of people, just loved it. A lot of the movies of the last few years everyone loved, I didn't really care for.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even seen Get Out, so I mean, I only read about that recently. I'm kind of really late to the party.
I really did like it.
With Jordan Peele, even though I looked at a lot of interviews of him, and he's great. He's brilliant. I love watching interviews with people before I see their films, and he's excellent. He's got brilliant horror taste. He likes great stuff. But I really want to watch Get Out. I really want to see what it's like. But Hereditary, I just couldn't get into it. Mandy, I like the music. There was bits of it that were okay, but I didn't like that whole macho Nicolas Cage thing. I just got bored of it, I think, and the chainsaw thing again. And I was like, God, take me back to the 80s. It was so much better. Hellraiser, it just seemed more original back then. There was stuff coming out you've never seen before, and as a teenager, it was like, wow, like this is it.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I think now it just seems like it's all been done, so it's a bit strange, really. But there is a few things around, as I say. There's a few films, even Shape of Water I haven't seen, but people rave about that film. I think it's a Creature from the Black Lagoon rip-off, isn't it? That film, but I've yet to see a film that's really up-to-date horror film that's phenomenal. So I'm still waiting, really.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend Get Out, though. I really liked it, and I like this new one, Us.
Yeah, everybody's saying Us is really good as well. I'm just really interested in Jordan Peele. Yeah, I'm really interested in him. He's, interesting guy. I didn't even know about him, anything about him. He was a comedian, but I didn't even know anything about the guy. But now I think, great, I'm really pushed to watch his films because they look really interesting. They look different. That's why I'm interested. Different story, different take on things, and anything that's kind of fresh, I kind of go towards,
Yeah, and they definitely make you think. Like Us, I just saw it 2 days ago, and it really makes me want to see it again to see a lot of the different clues and stuff that lead up to the finale and what everything means in the movie, which you don't get too often anymore.
Yes, well, yeah, people raving about it. I mean, quite a lot, which is great. I mean, the reviews are really good. I always read reviews, and I know maybe people shouldn't at times, but I read a review of Possum and it looked really good. I watched it and it was like, wow, this is actually good. It's a good little kind of story. Kind of reminded me a bit of Eraserhead, but with Get Out and Us, I was kind of more pushed to watch Get Out, I think. I think that the Us poster was kind of quite a straight, almost horror thing for me, and watching I think it's like doppelganger thing, and I read about with the film. But Get Out was kind of a bit of a mystery. I was like, okay, this looks a bit of a weird, odd film, and people say it's quite disturbing to watch, and I was like, that's kind of sold it for me if people say that. Yeah. But something a best friend of mine said, Hereditary, creeps him out, and I was like, great, I better watch this film then. And I watched it, and then I think it was about as creepy as a Carry On film.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't understand. I didn't understand the praise for it either. I didn't find it disturbing at all. And the end's almost like at a Scooby-Doo, because it's just kind of like they explain the whole movie in the last 5 minutes. And,
the kind of with the piano wire or whatever it was, where she's suspended and stuff like that, Toni Collette, and I thought that would be really good, but I couldn't get into it. I think the kind of bugs coming out the mouth thing, if I remember rightly, in bed, was the only bit that I thought was actually any good. And the soundtrack's brilliant. So I listened to the soundtrack before I saw the film, and the soundtrack's phenomenal. It's a brilliant soundtrack, but I think I put the whole thing on the film being brilliant because the soundtrack was. So maybe I expected too much, you see.
Well,
That's probably what it was.
That is another thing, because they promote every new horror movie lately as like the scariest movie ever made. It's never just like, hey, this is really good. It's the scariest movie ever made, and it usually isn't.
I mean, that was why I was interested in Get Out, because there was no thing that they were putting like that, and I was like, great, they're kind of downplaying it, if anything, I suppose, And it didn't really strike me as a horror sort of poster or anything like that. So I like all these things that are different about films, people not trying the obvious things, and I was kind of warming to it because of that. So I've got to go out and get it now and watch it, really, Do you know what I mean? You've recommended it, so,
yeah, definitely.
Definitely got to go and see it, definitely.
And I'm glad you brought up The Invisible Man, because I love all the Universal horror movies, but I always think The Invisible Man's the most underrated one. It doesn't get as much love, as Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman and all those.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing.
I think I was confused by it when I was a kid in the 70s. I think I was about 7 or 8 or 9 when I watched it, because there used to be a kind of double bill on a Saturday night on BBC One, and it was a horror double bill, and it was always Universal. And it was, I look forward to it every Saturday night, staying up late and watching these films. And The Invisible Man was different. It was a different film to what I expected. And it's one that stayed with me. And watching it recently, when I bought a copy of it, it's so nihilistic and it's so angry. Like, he is so angry in it. And I didn't really remember that as a kid. Like, the anger of it and the kind of, there is that nihilism there, and he's just kind of quite almost hateful in the film at times, and telling people to get out and stuff like that, and he wants to get on with his experiments and stuff like that. And it's a phenomenal film, yeah. It's just got that power to it. And Creature from the Black Lagoon, that's the same sort of thing. It's got that power to it. I love that. The underwater sequences are just
they're beautiful.
It's like groundbreaking as sort of 1933 King Kong, really, with the kind of first kind of monster film. So, yeah, I mean, even King Kong, I suppose, that's another classic.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It never got bettered, They've tried, but it never worked, did it?
Well, even the Creature from the Black Lagoon stuff, the underwater scenes, I think, are just as good as anything. When he's, like, mimicking the girl above him swimming. I mean, that stuff looks amazing.
Well, it's got that kind of romanticism about it, and I think that's why Shape of Water got made. Because he wanted to, that director wanted to imagine that, there was a romance between the creature and the girl, so he made that Shape of Water film, and which I still haven't watched.
Yeah, I love it too.
Creature from the Black Lagoon, there was that separation, wasn't there? Like, there was I suppose, coming from his point of view, the creature, there was a point of view there. There was that kind of romanticism. There was something going on, but for her, she was kind of repulsed by this creature, so it was kind of quite strange. But it just always intrigued me, that film, as a kid, and it stuck with me for some reason. But as I say, the Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman films are amazing. I love those films. But it was all the other films, as you say, the underrated ones like Invisible Man, that were more important, because you kind of come away thinking about them films more, and you want to watch them again and again. Where the kind of other ones, they're great, they're classics, but they're quite obvious in their stories, aren't they, compared to something like The Invisible Man?
Yeah. Just a cheap plug for my own website, but I had Ben Chapman on, who played the creature on the land scenes. And for
Okay.
me, that was the big highlight of doing the show, to have someone from Creature from the Black Lagoon on the show.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's really good. I mean, yeah, I kind of. There was this lady, it's quite famous, I don't know her name, but she made the costume and stuff like that. And that costume is brilliant, you know, I love it. It's so good. I mean, the two films after it I liked as well. I think it was Revenge of the Creature and The Creature Walks Among Us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the third one I really liked because Creature Walks Among Us was just this really oddball film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the Misfits obviously took their first album name from that film, Walk Among Us. But it was just a really odd film. The second film was not as, it was kind of quite straightforward, but Creature Walks Among Us was just weird, yeah. It was like when I was a kid watching that, it really confused me, as much as watching The Twilight Zone or Quater Mass Experiment or something like that, you know.
Because the second one is sort of like a King Kong kind of story where they're taking the monster into civilization. So it's not necessarily that original. The third one's very, like you said, very bizarre because like his scales get burned off and somehow makes him like human. It's very strange.
It is weird. I mean, just the title alone, The Creature Walks Among Us, pulled me into that film straight away as a kid. It was just such a, you kind of imagine the creature, trying to be human or them trying to make the creature human. I think I thought of that before I even watched the film, and watching it was amazing, but I did come away confused. So I haven't seen that film for such a long time, so it would be great to revisit it and watch it again, But I think it's probably about £50 on Amazon to buy, so I don't think it went on general release that much. I don't think it did anyway.
Yeah. So I have the old box set when they put out the box set of each of the Universal movies, so I have all the Creature movies on one disc. I have to find that. I'd like to watch that now that we're talking about it.
So what was your favorite Universal film?
Well, I actually probably do like Frankenstein, but right below that is Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Invisible Man.
What about the 80s?
For 80s, we said Hellraiser. I really like Hellraiser. I really like Creepshow.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, that was really good, actually.
Yeah. I like the style of it.
Yeah, because myself and Emma Dark would talk about vampire films because she did that film, Seize the Night, and I said I really like Near Dark because it didn't have any of the trappings of vampire films. There was kind of no fangs and stuff like that, and I don't think she's as keen on that film, but because I kind of grew up with that film. I really like it, it's just an amazing film, It's the soundtrack as well. I think Tangerine Dream did the soundtrack, but it's amazing. I remember seeing it at an all-nighter in London at a place called the Scala. We used to do horror all-nighters, and they used to play films 6 months before they come out. So they played Hellraiser 6 months before it came out. So you get to see all this stuff way before it hits the cinema.
Yeah.
And Near Dark was one of those films, and I didn't expect it. And it come on like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was just an amazing atmosphere watching that film. It was brilliant. And there's no film like it for me. It's a very clever sort of vampire film.
Yeah, I love it too. It's got like the kind of the family element of the which they're not really related, but the group of outcasts that are traveling together, and I like the idea of the darkened out van so the sun can't get in. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, you got that kind of Maze in it, and Maze theme was a great piece of music as well. And I come away from it thinking of that bit of music. I think I went out and bought the album like a week later and kind of wore it out. Just kept playing it all the time. And just remembering the film because the film wasn't out on video yet, and videos in the 80s when they came out were like £30, £40, so were really expensive. Where they're just DVDs are dirt cheap now, but back in the 80s, I think when I bought The Fly, it cost me like £30, with my second week's wages. So I bought a video and then went out and bought The Fly, Day of the Dead, and it's like £100 for about 3 video cassettes back then, which was a lot of money. But that's the thing, I was absolutely obsessed by it back then. So, it's like feeding your obsession with these horror films.
Yeah. So that's one of the things about Creepshow. It's the first VHS tape that my mom bought me in the 80s. And I still have it here. It's in the old clamshell case, so it has a special place for me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, I don't know, it's just not the same on DVD, you know? I think because I grew up in that era of horror film being really big, and like Chaz Balan and, you know, the Horror Holocaust book and Gore Shriek book come out, and you know, it was so much better than Fangoria for me. I wanted something more extreme than Fangoria, and I think he was putting these books out that were just, you know, like Gore Score as well, and all these kind of books. It was brilliant. You know, I love these books. And I just love his viewpoint. Obviously, he's not with us anymore, but he was a big influence on me, a big inspiration actually in the 80s. And it was like anything that he would like, you'd sort of watch it, and it would be great. You know, he had a really good sort of eye for good extreme films, especially like Cannibal Ferox and Cannibal Holocaust and Dr. Butcher MD, Blood-Sucking Freaks, all these kind of underground films that were banned at the time. And we used to get them from a place in Camden in London that used to under-the-counter kind of, you know, banned horror films. And we used to get all these films on video cassette, and they're amazing. You know, all these films that he used to review, you couldn't get them in the shops because they were just too extreme, you know. So he'd review Day of the Dead and Reanimated, but he wouldn't, you know, he'd review all these really extreme things as well. And you get them home, and yeah, amazing. You know, inspirational.
A huge fan of Blood-Sucking Freaks, Joel Reed movie. It's I just actually they interviewed me for the upcoming documentary because I'm a big fan. And,
amazing!
Yeah, that's such a weird movie, and there's something about that era of movies that were filmed in New York. They all have a grittiness to them and this weird feel. Even big movies like Taxi Driver, but you know, Chud and pretty much everything from that era.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a standout film, Blood-Sucking Freaks.
Yeah.
Just for the fact of, you know, the character Sardou in the film, which is absolutely insane, you know. And Louis DeJesus playing the kind of the mentor or the kind of, you know, Sardou's kind of henchman. It was just bizarre. It was a bizarre film, and it had kind of so much in that film going on. I think it was filmed in 1970. I think it was 1976, possibly. It was filmed. I had a really bad copy of it, where you could hardly see it really. And then years later, I got a kind of better copy on video and watched it, and yeah, it's phenomenal. It's just so good. Just fell in love with that film straight away. It's kind of disturbing, but at the same time, it's kind of really comic and funny. And got a lot of dark humor in it as well.
Yeah, it's because it has like a heart to it, which is a weird thing to say about it, but it's kind of, when you watch it's more tongue in cheek. It's not like hate filled. But it's very bizarre. I mean, it's not
bizarre,
good for everybody. Yeah.
The guy who played Sardou got to see the film. I think he got killed.
Yeah.
Like, not long after he'd done the film. So that's really sad. I don't think he got to see the finished product, which is awful, really. You know, it's absolutely awful. But it'd been good to see them guys, if they're alive now, at a convention. You know, they're all getting back together and, you know, maybe doing Blood-Sucking Freaks Part 2, you know, how good would that be?
That would be awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of the people died not long after they made the movie. Both Sardou and the short guy, I forget his name actually. And
Jesus,
yeah, and one of the women too. She was like shot by her husband or something.
Yeah, the ballerina who kind of tortures the reporter, where he's kind of tied up and she's kind of kicking him, sort of kicking his teeth out or kicking him to death or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but she was in like alcoholism and drugs and so a lot of bad stuff happened, and unfortunately she died really afterwards. But there were so many other people in that film that must be alive now, you know. Kind of it'd be good to sort of interview them really and speak to people about their experiences on set with that film, because I say, when I was 17 I was totally obsessed by that film. I was like playing it every single night, I think, and just putting it on, because it was like entertainment more than actually sitting down, putting the lights off, watching a horror film. It was kind of, it was very entertaining for its comic value, you know.
Yeah. And if you ever get a chance to meet Joel Reed, who made it, he's a very entertaining guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. He must have some good stories.
He does, yeah. I went and met him in Manhattan where he lives, and we went out to lunch, and I've made a video our dinner with Joel, and it was a really good time.
Wow. So what does he do now?
I think he's retired, but I think he's making a new movie coming. Hopefully this year he's making it.
Oh, wow, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
really good. I know it came out on. It came out on Troma, the Troma label. I think.
Yeah. See, he's not a fan of Troma or Lloyd Kaufman, so there's some because he says they don't own the rights to the movie. And so, when they put out the Blu-ray, it's someone else doing, the commentary. And they also said that they have the director's cut, and he said, how can they have the director's cut when I'm the director? And so there's... Also, he wanted to make a sequel, but they say they own the rights, so it could never really happen. There was, a dispute who actually owns it.
So what if there's any unedited footage that he still has that never actually... got into the film, that if it got re-released, there could be some extras or something like that. It would be really nice because it is a real big kind of cult classic, but even more so after the 80s, people were talking about that film, and it's bizarre, in the 80s people knew about it, but I think after that it really hit the kind of big time of cult. People into cult kind of films, and it is, become a cult classic, definitely.
Yeah. I remember in the 80s when you're talking about having bad prints of movies, it's something that people don't really know today, but you'd have second or third generation of a VHS tape.
That's right.
And I remember the original Evil Dead was hard to get, and my brother's 9 years older, and I remember going to party with him. With his friends, and they were watching Evil Dead, and it was a big deal that someone had a copy of it. And it was very, very hard to see, but it was a big deal. Hey, we're watching Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a copy of Evil Dead, and Evil Dead 2 I saw at the cinema, and it was already coming out on video, so it was really easy to buy. And I think that in the early 80s, I think my brother had when videos first come out, my brother had a copy of The Exorcist for the first time on video, and then he, even though it was from the 70s, he obviously brought that home and stuff like that. So I think that the early copies, like Bloodsucking Freaks that I had, and probably Evil Dead as well, there weren't great copies at all. They were watchable, but they weren't brilliant. The Bloodsucking Freaks was so dark. That beginning bit, I think, where he's in the back of the van, I think, if I remember rightly, where it's set in New York and it's at night, it was almost pitch black apart from a few little lights, so it was that bad. When I got actually the really better copy of it, I was thinking, wow, I've never seen this bit before, because it was actually completely blacked out on the original because of the, probably second generation copy, as you say. They were passing hands at that time, but it's like tape trading was the same. I come from kind of metal music and stuff, so tape trading in the 80s, you were getting second, third generations of even the first Metallica demo before Metallica put out their first album, and the same with Slayer and Exodus and bands like that. So, but you kind of put it on because you kept it because that's all you had, at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there are the rare movies I think actually looks better, like a bad copy, because I've seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, both in original 35mm print, a very bad copy at the theater recently, and then I saw the restored one, and that was actually a movie I think looked better, the old bad cut, because there's something dirty about the movie, and when it's really brightened up and it looks good, it takes away from the movie.
Yeah, especially if it's that kind of film, and Chainsaw Massacre's, one of the greatest films ever made, and for me to see it like that, it's great, it's like the copy I used to have, I think it was the Channel 5, is it called, that put out videos in the 80s, and I bought Halloween, which is one of my favourite ever films, the first Halloween, and Now I've got it on DVD. It's kind of a pristine digital printed copy, and it's still brilliant. But I prefer the video version that I had in the 80s. The same with Reanimator. I prefer the video version of that, really.
Yeah. The first time you see Reanimator, especially if you see the uncut one with the full, severed head going between her legs and stuff, that's such an amazing movie.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it just there's so much comedy in Reanimator as well. But it kind of shocked me when I first put it on because it was so bloody and so full on. It was like, wow, this is great. I kind of didn't expect it to be this kind of full on, kind of like almost like not like a blood fest, but there was a lot of like when the head gets squashed and stuff like that. So yeah, the same with the Day of the Dead, the classic part at the end where they kind of tear him apart. That was. I love the film, but I ended up just going to that bit all the time and watching it obsessively because I was thinking, how the hell did they do that? It's such a brilliant effect, whereas something like The Fly, I'd watch it from start to finish and almost I've got a real emotional attachment to that film because it's that sort of film that I'd watch from start to finish. It's got that power to it. Whereas Day of the Dead is great. But I was just more interested in the gore and the effects more than the actual story, And zombies really bore me. I've never seen Walking Dead, but the zombie films back then were good, but now,
they've been done to death.
I've never seen it. Yeah, I've still never seen it. So people say it's really good, but I still haven't got round to watching it. But maybe I'll give it a chance one day. But I'd rather stick with the old films. Maybe it's because I'm getting old now. Possibly.
But the Day of the Dead when they rip him apart and he's like, choke on it. It's
amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's unbelievable. When I saw it, it's like a teenager, 17-year-old. It's I couldn't believe it. Absolutely couldn't believe it. I never saw it at the cinema. Just got it on video, watched it, and it blew my mind, that part. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Really, they kind of left the best till last, didn't they? On that. And Dawn of the Dead I liked, but I didn't like it as much. And Night of the Living Dead I love that film, but it's a very different film. It's a very groundbreaking film, Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead is brilliant, don't get me wrong, it's a great film, but Day of the Dead just had this power to it with the effects, and absolutely brilliant, I think Return of the Living Dead come out after that, and I liked it, but it just wasn't the same anymore for me. It was about them first.
It's very comedic, Return of the Living Dead.
It was more comedic, I think he would, it was sort of a more light-hearted take on things. Just like after Chainsaw Massacre come out and there was these other films and they were more light-hearted and it wasn't like that kind of brutality of that, the eeriness of that original film, which is it's unbelievable that, the first film. It was such a masterwork, really is.
The second one's so weird when I was a kid because I'd watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and it's so, brutal and it's gritty. And then the sequel's really like a parody of the first movie. It's just like a really broad comedy and it was very strange. I kind of like it more now that I'm older, but compared to the first one, it's really not anything.
Yeah, I mean, sequels sometimes don't work. I mean, for me, I think Hellbound, I think that the second Hellraiser film, I kind of enjoyed pretty much even more than the first film. I loved it. But I just couldn't get into the third Hellraiser film. I kind of didn't like it at all. It was really boring. But the first two were amazing. Just like Halloween, the first two were brilliant. Season of the Witch has not got any connection, but I really did enjoy that film.
I do too.
The films after it, I've lost interest, really, to be honest with you. I've kind of lost interest in it by then. I saw the Rob Zombie films, and they were good. I liked them, but I'd always go back to the first two films, especially the first film, the 1978 film. It's got everything you'd want, really, for a horror film.
Yeah, I think the Rob Zombie one, I don't dislike it, but I think they took away a lot of what made the original movie scary. Where it was just a kid and there's no reason why he's evil. He's just evil. And then in the Rob Zombie one, it's like he's bullied at school and he's got bad parenting and all this stuff. So there's reasons why he turns out the way he does.
Yeah, I think I was shocked by how tall he was in those Rob Zombie films. I mean, Rob Zombie, great at what he does, these films, but for me, I didn't like that kind of tallness. I liked Michael Myers as he was, in the 1978 film. There was something about that. He didn't need to be really hulking and tall and imposing. That wasn't Michael Myers to me, that I grew up with. So, yeah, it's like when things are blown out of all proportion. That's the thing. I think it was like the Spider-Man film with the lizard, and it was just all blown out of all proportion for me. So it was just almost too over the top. I think that's what they do with like King Kong films now. It's all too over the top. So the subtlety for me is lost. It's gone, where I prefer the way it was. I prefer the kind of subtlety. You don't need to go too over the top to make it look gigantic at the end of the day,
Because Michael Myers in the original movie, that's why he is scary, even as a kid, because it could just be your neighbor. Hey, you're in the suburbs and your neighbor seems totally normal, could be a murderer. And then when he's older, he blends in because he's like a normal-sized guy. But the guy who plays him in the Rob Zombie one, if you saw that guy, you would be terrified. He's like 7 feet tall, and this mask is all crazy looking. And
yeah, I think that's what did it for me, though. I like the fact of...
I agree.
It could be the person next door. You don't know who's living there, or you don't know... It's that quiet person next door. You don't know what they're thinking, what's going through their mind, and they may say hello to you. And once they're behind that door, behind closed doors, all manner of things could be going on that you wouldn't know about. So it's I like that kind of scariness and eeriness about things, other than you can see the person and almost judge a book by its cover. It's like, the person's definitely a psycho. Like, they're coming towards me and they're kind of that tall, they look really angry, and, they've got a kind of knife in their hand or something like that. But I'd take all that away, it's just, it's a bit too boring, all that sort of stuff. I like stuff that's more subtle. I like the Omen films, the first two Omen films, especially the second film.
When he's in school, military school,
film. Damien, it's brilliant. It's again, a masterpiece, it's brilliant. The same as the first one. So it's all subtlety. It's very subtle. Nothing's too over the top. And that's what I really like about films. Unless it's Reanimator, and then it is over the top.
Yeah,
but still,
but that works.
Gone further than that. People have gone much further than that in gore films and horror films. And I think people I've got bored of a lot of those sort of films, because I go back to what I kind of grew up with. I think as Lemmy from Motorhead always used to say, like with music, it's the music you grow up with that's there when you get older. That's what you go back to. And it's exactly, I totally agree. It's the same with music, but it's the same with film for me. I'd always go back to what I grew up with, and even to inspire me to write stuff now, whether it be House of Lexi or any of the other films I've done. So, they're always there to inspire,
Yeah, I agreed with about Hellraiser 3 as well. I actually think that's one of the worst of the sequels.
It is.
They really changed the character for one thing, because like before that, he's not evil. He's kind of neutral. He's doing kind of what people bring him there, Pinhead. And he's also not the whole movie. He's a small part of the movie. The third one, he is the movie, and he's just like outright evil. And then all the other Cenobites are very silly with like, discs and like drills in their head. And
that's the problem. You see, you totally knocked the nail on the head, Neil. For me, I think like seeing them walking past shop windows, I think that was in the film. That was the point where I was going to leave the cinema. I was like, no, they can't do this. It's terrible. I mean, they should have stopped on the second film. It's brilliant. They've got the doctor, and my favourite part in that film is when I can't remember if it's who kind of gets into the doctor's study while he's out, and they look through his books, and they look at all this kind of stuff that he's kind of researching. And I think it's such a beautiful part in the film. It's a brilliant bit in the film, because it gives you an insight into the doctor's life, into what he's thinking. And I really like that. And I think they should have stopped. They did a series, didn't they, with Hellraiser? I never saw it, but I think they did a series or something like that. But they'll probably do something for Netflix and bring it back, like everything else is coming back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're always talking about totally rebooting it. And I know for a while it was going to be with Clive Barker, which, that would have been worthwhile. But, yeah, I don't know. There's like 9 or 10 of them now.
Yeah, it's just too much. I mean, it's just the first 2 work really well. It's like Halloween. There's the first 2. There's all these other ones and the H2O one and all this stuff. And you kind of seeing the same story again and again and again being, one for a better word, regurgitated, I suppose. But, unless they're trying a different angle on things, completely story-wise, yeah, I got bored of it, really. I think the most disturbing film I saw when I grew up was not even a horror film. It was a French film called The Phone Box, if you've ever seen that. I think it's from 1972. It's amazing. It scared the hell out of me as a child, and still now when I kind of watch it on YouTube or something, it's got that claustrophobic feeling. I think like the guy makes a phone call, he's trapped inside the phone box, and it's amazing. I think they did a remake of it, I think with Colin Farrell, I think loosely based on...
Yeah. I didn't know it was a remake, but I saw that movie.
Yeah, the original film is, it's unbelievable, So to me, that was, it should be classed as a horror film, actually, technically, but it's not. But it's got that real horrible feel to it, It is quite terrifying, really. So it should be up there with all the others, really, by rights.
Yeah. So back to the House of Lexi and your shorts. Once they have the festival run, what becomes of them?
Yeah. That's a good question. Because I was originally putting together a CV, like a visual CV, to give to, because I produced the films as well as directing and casting them, writing them and funding them, and doing the music. So I wanted to get a producer involved, so I was going to try that. And I was going to try and send it to TV companies, possibly Netflix, I don't know, to try and flesh out some sort of series. So that was the idea originally a year ago. But it's got to this stage now, and I suppose, they've all got their own identities, the films, but they're connected by something. So that gives me the thing that there could be an idea for a series there. And I did originally have a name for a series, but I scrapped it and just stuck with the standalone films, the kind of anthology stories, I suppose. But as I say, they connect. So there's something there. So once they finish the festivals, I suppose I'll be trying to see, be shopping around while they're at festivals and see if I can get them, if I can get something like that, to a TV company, get someone to watch it and just see where I can go from there. I mean, I do put out DVDs on a label called Bleakscape, but with these films, they're almost too good to release, I know it sounds strange, but, I've never been a person to release things on the internet. I'm kind of quite old style where I like to hold the box, or to hold the jewel case of a CD, and I like to pull out the inlay and read the back of the DVD cover and stuff like this. So having it online is a bit cold, I suppose, but at one point I'm going to have to let go and I'm going to have to just release them, online and go from there. So maybe a pay-per-view thing online and go from there. So, but at the moment there's Being Without and there's a silent film called The Affliction Table, which I've acted in, which is coming out this year that we finished. A film called Emily's Hands, which is a 9-minute short, which features Jenny Renacre, and Jenny Renacre was in The Witches, and she was in Jubilee. She was in The Macintosh Man with Paul Newman. She's been in a lot of big films, The Creeping Flesh she was in, Peter Cushing was in, and she's 72 years old, but she's a massive idol of mine, and she agreed to be in one of the films, and I've loved her since I was a kid, and become friends with her over the last few years, and amazingly she wanted to be in the film. So she's in that film. So, and that's kind of, it is again like psychological horror. And then we've got House of Lexi, of course, Emma Dark and Helen Stevens. And then the film in August, which is a psychological drama, and the film in November, which is a psychological horror, quite a full-on kind of psychological horror film. So with them films, I suppose, once things are at festivals, things are getting finished. So I think I'll be in festivals for a little while yet, Neil, before anything happens. But it would be nice to see if someone could take them on and do something with them. So to shop around and use them as a CV, that's the idea, really.
Yeah. I like that deal. Plus, there are, you mentioned Netflix, but nowadays there are several, Netflix type places like Shudder that does all horror,
Okay.
and Hulu and Amazon and stuff. So
Yeah.
this place is out there. It's always looking for content.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely shop it around to those places and just to see. I mean, I'll never run before I can walk. I'm always apprehensive. I never think anything particularly is going to happen with the films. It's just I make them, put them out there, and I'll just see what happens, and that's it. I'm really proud of them. So yeah, I'll just see, and that I'll just keep hammering them and going for it, and and just see what comes of it. But it would be nice. It'd be great to get a series out of it, and it'd be nice to have some financial backing. I mean, I'm working a day job to pay for these films, so for me, it would be nice to have even a little bit of money there behind me, so I can, relax a bit with the money, I suppose. But it's good. Half my money goes on into films, so it's a worthwhile thing for me, to do that, and it could be an investment. Who knows?
So, where can you follow your films? Online to see what you're doing next, or where House of Lexi or any of your shorts. What festivals are going to be at?
Well, there's like a Facebook page for House of Lexi, which is Facebook / Lexi is Haunted, and there's Facebook pages for the Affliction Table, for Being Without, and for Emily's Hands. And I've got an Instagram as well, MW Daniels, which is BleakBeak70, which is the handle. And don't really use Twitter that much. I should use it more, really, but I do post stuff on there. But I use kind of Facebook and Instagram more, really. But yeah, they're the places for if people want to see the films. And there's a Wix website, but that's kind of up and coming. So I think in the next couple of weeks there'll be a website there. Which would be, I think it'd be nwdaniels.com. So, and then people will be able to go to there and see the updates on the films and whatever's happening. But at the moment it's kind of, just all going into festivals and just waiting to see if they're going to get accepted, really. Being Without's just been accepted for a second festival, a place called the Unrestricted View Festival, and that happens in May. So that's really nice, so there is a few things happening, so people are taking notice of them, which is excellent, really. It's great.
Yeah, I myself don't use Twitter a lot, and I always say the same thing. I probably should use it more because I know people like Twitter. I just don't personally like it, but I think Facebook is a lot more personal. But
yeah, I mean, Facebook and Instagram are great because they're quite quick with people getting back to you on stuff. And I think Twitter, I found like this kind of. I first joined Twitter and it was like this desolate kind of, I don't know, like a icy kind of island with nobody on it. It was like you put something out there and nothing would really come back quick enough, And it was where Instagram's, as I say, it's very instant and people really onto things straight away. So it's quite nice, but Twitter was a bit odd. I couldn't really get to grips with that for a little while, but now it's okay. People, you post stuff and people like stuff. You get some opinions on there, which is quite nice. But Facebook and Instagram are the two ones, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking with me, and I hope people check out the movies at the festivals.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. And your gore films and horror films. It's excellent talking to someone who is enthusiastic about all their old films.
Yeah,
as well,
the stuff I grew up watching, and I still love it. So
yeah, especially Invisible Man. That's amazing.
Yes.
Oh, someone likes that. That's it.
I agree. Then you've got to be friends. And James Whale doesn't get enough love when people talk about like the great horror directors, and I think he deserves to be up there.
Yeah, definitely deserves to be up there. I mean, there's so many underrated that need to be up there, still. But, that's just the way it is, man. And I'm sure there'll be a book out there of all these people logged in there at one point, sort of underground directors. But yeah, as I say, the Bloodsucking Freaks guy, for me, he needs to be up there.
Yes.
He's a genius at the end of the day. So, he's great. I'd love to meet that guy. So I'm very envious that you've met him, Neil.
Yeah, he's a man. like to meet him again. It's been a while. It's been a couple of years, but yeah, he's great.
He's great, yeah. He's really good. He's good.
Mm-hmm. He's a little weird, just like the movie, but he's a very nice guy.
I think you've got to be to make a film like that. You've got to be a bit strange.
Yeah, you couldn't just be like a normal, like an accountant or something, and I made blood-sucking freaks on the side.
I think he's probably, obviously, had people come up to him at conventions that know that film, every single second of that film, which is great. So it's good that it's spread that far, a film like that. I think that's beautiful that that's happened. Where it could have easily got brushed under the carpet, like so many other films, but it's kind of come out as this classic, which it deserves. At the end of the day, it really deserves it. And I'm still need to buy a T-shirt of Bloodsucking Freaks.
Yes, I have one. Very cool. Well, I appreciate this, and I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Neil. Really appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks. Take care.
Cheers, man. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye.
Bye.
This is Cliff Wallace. I was a makeup artist on Hellraiser and Hellbound, and since I've been making creatures for the last 30 years or so, I've done stuff with Guillermo del Toro, I've done stuff with Danny Boyle on the 28 Days Later films, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com.